Okay, I want you to close your eyes for a second, unless you're driving, obviously, and picture a specific section of an upscale grocery store.
Oh, I think I know the one.
You know the one I'm talking about. It's usually near the artisanal cheeses, maybe next to the truffle oils and the imported olives.
I know exactly where you're going with this. You're in the Epicurean aisle.
Exactly. We see that word Epicurean and we immediately conjure up a very specific lifestyle. It's gourmet. It's indulgent.
Yeah, it's the treat yourself mentality.
It is, wrapped in a toga.
Yeah.
If you call someone an Epicurean today, you are basically calling them a foodie with expensive taste and a high credit limit.
Which is, ironically, arguably the biggest branding error in the history of philosophy.
It really is a total reversal, isn't it? Because today we are diving into the actual philosophy of Epicurus using Philip Stoke's philosophy, the great thinkers, as our guide.
Right.
And the reality of this man's life. It is basically the polar opposite of the marketing.
Oh, completely. If the real Epicurus walked into a modern Epicurean feast, he would probably be horrified. Yeah.
I mean, we are talking about a guy who lived on bread and water, a guy who was chronically ill for most of his life.
Right.
And his definition of pleasure wasn't about adding luxury or, collecting experiences. It was about subtracting pain.
That is the core theme we are exploring today. Stokes calls it therapeutic hedonism.
I love that phrase.
Me too, because it sounds like a contradiction in terms. How can hedonism, which we think of as the pursuit of wild pleasure, be therapy?
Well, that's the mission of this deep dive. We're going to uncover how a philosophy from, 300 BC was designed as a very specific tool to cure the anxieties of contemporary life.
And let's be honest, if there's one thing our listener knows about, it is the anxieties of contemporary life.
For sure.
The technology has changed. We have smartphones instead of scrolls. But the stress, the fear of the future, that seems pretty constant.
It is. Epicurus was working in a time of massive political turmoil in Greece. You had empires rising and falling, uncertainty everywhere.
So he was building a kind of mental shelter. Exactly. A mental fortress, a way to be happy no matter what the world threw at you. But, and this is the part that usually trips people up, to understand how he did that, we have to start in a weird place.
Okay.
We have to start with physics.
This was the part of the reading that genuinely surprised me. I expected moral lectures, maybe some quotes about friendship, but Epicurus starts with atoms.
You have to. You can't understand the therapy without the science. See, Epicurus was born in Samos to a poor Athenian colonist. He wasn't an aristocrat like Plato sitting around discussing, abstract forms.
No marble halls for him.
Not at all. He was a practical guy. He needed a worldview that made sense of physical reality, so he adopted the view of the pre-Socratics, specifically Democritus.
Democritus, the father of atomism.
Right. The idea that the universe isn't made of spirits or magic or divine will. It is made of tiny, invisible, indivisible particles called atoms moving in a void.
And everything is just made of these atoms.
Everything. Stars, rocks, your body, even your soul is just a temporary clump of atoms.
Which is a surprisingly modern view for ancient Greece. It's very materialist.
It is, but, and this is a huge but, Epicurus had a massive problem with Democritus's version of the universe. See, Democritus believed that these atoms moved in what he called undisturbed parallel lines.
Okay, help us visualize that. What does a universe of parallel lines look like?
Imagine heavy rain falling on a perfectly windless day. Every raindrop, every atom is falling straight down parallel to the others at a constant speed.
So they never touch.
They never touch, they never interact unless something forces them to.
Okay, I'm picturing it. It seems orderly.
It is orderly, too orderly. If that is how the universe works, then every movement is determined by gravity and weight.
It's a machine.
It's a clockwork universe, and if the atoms are locked in a predictable path and you are made of atoms, then you are locked in a path.
So, determinism.
Hard determinism. If I pick up this coffee cup right now, I'm not actually choosing to do it. It is just the inevitable result of atoms colliding based on physics set in motion at the beginning of time.
We become just robots made of meat.
Exactly.
And I assume Epicurus, being a guy who wanted to teach people how to live better, didn't like the idea that we were just robots.
He hated it. It destroys ethics. It destroys the whole point of philosophy. How can I tell you to choose happiness if you can't choose anything?
If you're just a puppet of fate.
Right. So Epicurus did something that historically is kind of hilarious. He literally hacked the physics to save free will.
Wait, he changed the laws of the universe to fit his philosophy?
He did. He introduced a concept called the swerve.
The swerve. It sounds like a dance move from the 60s.
It does, but it's actually a metaphysical revolution. He argued that as these atoms are falling in the void, occasionally at totally random times and places, an atom will just swerve.
Just a tiny bit.
Just a tiny bit off its track.
Without a cause.
Without a predictable cause, a spontaneous deviation. And because that one atom swerves, it crashes into another, which bounces off another, and suddenly you have collisions, you have creation.
And most importantly,
You have a break in the chain of destiny.
that feels, well, it feels a little convenient, doesn't it? I need free will, so magic swerve.
It is incredibly convenient, and his critics pointed that out immediately. But Stokes makes a great point here. This wasn't just bad physics, it was necessary ethics.
Ah.
Epicurus was willing to break the mechanical laws of the universe to preserve human agency. He needed a universe where fate wasn't the boss.
So the swerve provides the physical space for us to be in charge of our own lives. It introduces just enough chaos to allow for choice.
Exactly. It means the future isn't written. And if the future isn't written, you are not a victim of fate. You are in the driver's seat.
Okay, so thanks to the swerve, we are driving the car. We aren't just passengers. Now the question is, where are we driving?
Right.
This brings us to the hedonism part of the title. We've established we have free will. How should we use it?
Epicurus says we should use it to pursue pleasure. He is, strictly speaking, a hedonist. He believes pleasure is the only intrinsic good in life.
But we have to be very careful with that word.
Right.
Because we are back to the foodie problem.
We are. When we say pleasure in the 21st century, we usually think of what philosophers call kinetic pleasure, active enjoyment.
Right. Eating a steak, riding a roller coaster, buying a new car.
The dopamine hit, the rush,
Yeah.
chasing the high. But Epicurus looked at that and said, no, that's a trap.
Why?
Because what happens after the high?
The crash. You get a hangover, or you run out of money, or you just get bored and need a bigger roller coaster.
The law of diminishing returns.
Right.
Precisely. It is a treadmill. You have to keep running just to stay in the same place. So Epicurus redefined happiness completely.
Okay.
He didn't define it as the presence of pleasure. He defined it as the elimination of pain.
That is a really crucial distinction.
Yeah.
It is a negative definition. It's defined by what isn't there.
It is. Think of it like health. You don't usually walk around saying, wow, my liver feels amazing today.
No, you don't.
You don't notice your body when everything is working perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
You only notice it when you have a headache or a twisted ankle.
That's true. Health is basically just the absence of sickness.
For Epicurus, happiness is the same. It is that state of not noticing any pain. It is a neutral, calm state. He called it ataraxia tranquility.
So for him, a glass of water when you are thirsty is the ultimate pleasure.
Yes.
Not because water is fancy, but because it removes the pain of thirst.
Exactly. And once the pain of thirst is gone, you can't get happier by drinking expensive wine. You are just varying the flavor. You aren't actually increasing the level of contentment.
That is actually a really radical economic theory, if you think about it. It caps the market. It says, once you are full, you are full. A Michelin star meal doesn't make you fuller than bread.
And that is why he was so dangerous to the status quo. He was telling people that they didn't need more.
Right.
But Stokes highlights that there are two types of pain we need to eliminate: physical pain and mental pain.
And based on the text, which one was the bigger enemy?
The mental pain, by far.
That seems surprising to me. I mean, ancient Greece, no anesthesia, no antibiotics, no dentistry. Physical pain must have been terrible.
It was. Epicurus himself suffered from kidney stones, which is excruciating, but he argued that physical pain is limited. He had this mantra: continuous pain does not last long in the flesh.
So, if it's really intense,
It kills you quickly. If it is chronic, you get used to it.
this too shall pass.
Or this will kill me. Either way, it ends. But mental pain, anxiety, fear, that is limitless. That can grind on you for decades.
Yeah.
The text lists things like anxiety, depression, and psychological ills.
It is the stuff that keeps you up at 3 a.m.
Yeah,
Staring at the ceiling, worrying about things that haven't even happened yet.
right. So therapeutic hedonism is really about mental hygiene. It is about scrubbing the mind of the fears that cause that phantom pain.
So let's talk about the strategy. If I want to be a good Epicurean and scrub my mind, what do I actually do? The text uses words like prudence and temperance.
Which, again, are not words you usually hear at a party.
Definitely not. Hey, everyone, let's get prudent tonight.
But think about the logic. If your goal is no pain, then you have to calculate the cost of your pleasures. Let's say you have the opportunity to go out and party all night, spend a ton of money, drink too much.
Sounds fun in the moment. That's the kinetic pleasure.
Sure. But The Epicurean calculus kicks in. What is the cost?
A hangover tomorrow.
Right. Less money in your pocket, which creates anxiety about rent. Maybe you say something stupid and regret it for a week. The pain bill arrives later, and it's higher than the pleasure was worth.
So a true hedonist, in this view, actually stays home and reads a book.
Yes,
Not because they are boring, but because they are selfish. They don't want the pain bill.
exactly. Virtue, being good, being moderate, isn't about following rules from the gods. It is a strategy for self-protection. He says we should be virtuous because it pays off in peace of mind.
It's purely pragmatic.
It is.
It is not be good because it is right. It is be good because it is easier.
And yet, despite this incredibly simple, modest lifestyle, people hated him. The source mentions the Stoic philosopher Epictetus.
The rival team.
The rival team. Epictetus accused Epicurus of being a debauched maniac. He said he was promoting a promiscuous or decadent lifestyle.
It was a total smear campaign.
Fake news, ancient style, but it stuck. That is why we have the word Epicurean meaning luxury today. It is actually the insults of his enemies that survived in the dictionary, not his actual teaching.
That is tragic. So we have cleared up the lifestyle, live simply, avoid the hangover, seek tranquility. But there are bigger clouds hanging over the human head than just a hangover.
Much bigger.
Stokes identifies the two big bosses of anxiety, the fear of death and the fear of the gods.
These are the ultimate sources of mental pain. If you are constantly worried about dying or constantly worried that the gods are going to zap you, you can never be happy.
No matter how much bread and water you have.
Right.
So Epicurus decided to dismantle them both, using logic.
Yeah.
Let's tackle death first, because that is the one most people are still terrified of.
Sure.
How does he cure the fear of death?
He goes back to the atoms. Remember, you are just a temporary arrangement of atoms.
Right. Concatenation.
So when you die, the arrangement breaks. The atoms disperse. The sensorium, the part of you that feels things, is gone. It dissolves back into the void.
Okay, so lights out. That sounds terrifying to many people, that idea of non-existence.
But Epicurus asks, why is it terrifying? He says, death is nothing to us.
Good.
And his argument is, when we are, death is not come, and when death is come, we are not.
I have heard that quote. It is basically saying you and death can never be in the same room together.
Exactly. You will never experience being dead. You won't be floating in a black void feeling lonely. You won't be regretting your life. You simply won't be.
It is the same as the time before you were born.
That's the prenatal argument, right?
Yeah.
I don't sit around mourning the fact that I missed the year 1750. I wasn't there. It didn't hurt.
So why worry about missing the year 2150?
It is irrational. He believed that if you truly internalize this, that there is no punishment, no pain, no sensation awaiting you, then the fear evaporates. You are free.
It is a bold stance, but it only works if you are 100% sure there is no afterlife. Which brings us to the second fear, the gods.
Yes.
Because in ancient Greece, everyone was pretty sure the gods were watching, judging, and preparing to punish them.
And that fear was a constant low-level hum of anxiety. Did I sacrifice the right goat? Is Zeus angry that I stepped on a bug?
It made people neurotic.
Totally. They felt like they were constantly being watched by a police state in the sky.
So did Epicurus just say gods aren't real?
No, and this is nuanced. The text calls him a theist. She believed gods existed.
Oh, okay.
He thought the concept of gods was so universal that there must be something to it, but he completely rejected the idea that they care about us.
So they exist, but they are absentee landlords.
Pretty much. They are anthropomorphic, meaning they look like us, but they are perfect, immortal, and blissful. And Epicurus asked a very logical question. If you are a perfect, happy being, why would you stress yourself out running a universe?
That is a fair point.
Yeah.
If I were an immortal god, I would probably be chilling on a beach somewhere, not worrying about the weather patterns in Athens.
Exactly. Stokes writes that the gods are occupied with their own pursuit of pleasure and contemplation. They are having the ultimate Epicurean time,
They wouldn't want the hassle.
getting involved in human politics or wars or natural disasters.
Yeah.
That would be painful. That would be work. That would annoy them,
So the gods are too cool to rule.
essentially. And this brings us to one of the most famous pieces of logic in history. To prove that the gods don't intervene, Epicurus formulated the problem of evil.
I feel like I debated this in college late at night. I didn't realize it went back this far.
It is the origin story of the argument,
Yeah.
and the logic is brutal. It is a four-part trap designed to show that an interventionist God is impossible.
Okay, walk us through it.
First, is God willing to prevent evil but not able?
Then he isn't all-powerful, he is weak.
Second, Is he able but not willing?
Then he is malevolent, he is mean, he sees suffering and just watches.
Third, is he both able and willing?
Then why is there evil? Why do bad things happen to good people?
And finally, is he neither able nor willing?
Then why call him God?
Exactly. Now, modern atheists use this logic to prove God doesn't exist. But remember, Epicurus was using it to prove that intervening gods don't exist.
He wasn't trying to be an atheist.
No. He is saying, look at the mess around us. Look at the suffering. Clearly, no one is driving the bus, so stop worrying about the bus driver getting mad at you.
That is such a fascinating flip. He uses the existence of evil as a source of comfort.
Yes.
Bad things happen, which proves the gods are leaving us alone.
It liberated people. It meant that lightning wasn't a judgment. It was just static electricity. It meant a shipwreck wasn't a punishment. It was just wind.
It took the moral weight off of bad luck.
It did.
It really is a philosophy of subtraction, isn't it? You
Yeah.
subtract the fear of hell, you subtract the fear of Zeus, you subtract the need for a yacht, and what is left?
Peace. Just you, your friends, and a loaf of bread in a garden.
It sounds idyllic. But looking at the source, Stokes points out that this whole system is a bit of a curious mix of contradictions.
It is a paradox if you zoom out. Think about the ingredients. He is a hedonist who lives like a monk.
Right, a hedonist who preaches temperance.
He is a theist who argues the gods are useless.
A theist who rejects divine intervention.
And he's an atomist, a scientist, who rejects scientific laws with the swerve just to save free will.
It is like he raided the pantry of philosophy and took only the ingredients that tasted good.
He was a pragmatist. He didn't care about theoretical consistency as much as he cared about the result,
Yeah.
curing anxiety. And it worked. Epicureanism was massive for 600 years.
600 years. That is longer than the Roman Empire lasted.
It was huge. His most famous follower was the Roman poet Lucretius.
Yeah.
He wrote a poem called On the Nature of Things, which is actually how we know a lot of this stuff.
Because most of Epicurus's own books were lost.
They were. Partly time, but partly because the competition took over. The Romans eventually decided they liked Stoicism better.
Why Stoicism?
Think about the Roman vibe. Empire, duty, war, politics.
Right.
Stoicism is all about do your duty, endure pain, serve the state. Epicureanism says retreat to your garden and hide from politics.
Ah, I see. You can't build an empire on people who just want to sit in the garden and eat cheese.
Exactly. It was seen as unpatriotic eventually. And then, of course, Christianity came along, and they really didn't like the no afterlife part.
Or the gods don't care part.
Not at all. So Epicurus was villainized, his books were burned or lost, and we are left with just fragments.
The source mentions we only have 3 letters and 2 sets of quotes.
It is a tragedy. Imagine if we lost all of Shakespeare and only had a book of fluent quotes. We get the gist, but we missed the nuance.
But even with just the gist, the message feels incredibly urgent today.
I think it is more relevant now than it was in Athens.
How so?
Wow, look at our lives. We are drowning in kinetic pleasures. The endless scroll of social media, the one-click shopping, the 24-hour news cycle.
We're constantly stimulating ourselves.
Trying to fill the void? And Epicurus would say we are just pouring water into a bucket with a hole in it.
Exactly. We are trying to cure anxiety by adding more. More information, more stuff, more likes.
And Epicurus is screaming across the centuries, stop adding, start subtracting.
It is the ultimate fear of missing out cure. You can't miss out if you don't need anything.
It is about realizing that the things you are terrified of, social status, the economy, the gods of public opinion, they can't actually hurt your soul.
And the things you need for happiness.
Food, shelter, friends are actually pretty easy to get.
It makes happiness cheap. And I mean that in the best way.
It democratizes happiness. You don't need to be a billionaire to be an Epicurean. You don't need to be famous. You just need to change your mind.
I love that image. It shifts the battlefield from the world to the mind. But I want to leave the listener with a thought here. We have talked about this as a defensive philosophy.
Right, it is a fortress.
So here's the question. In our modern world, we are often told that ambition is everything. Strive, achieve, grow. Epicurus seems to say that ambition is a sickness.
A sickness that brings pain, yes. He would ask, what are you striving for?
So, if you're feeling anxious today, ask yourself, is the anxiety coming from the world, or is it coming from your own refusal to be satisfied with what is right in front of you?
Are you running on a treadmill of pain, convinced that if you just run faster, it will turn into pleasure?
That is the question. Maybe the swerve we all need isn't a promotion or a new car.
Maybe the swerve is just stepping off the treadmill.
Just stepping on. I like that. Thanks for helping us unpack the Garden of Epicurus.
Well, my pleasure, literally.
We will catch you in the next deep dive.